Hi, Dom. Just checking in to see if you can hear us here in the school committee room. Stephen, we're getting ready for the countdown, not just yet. Getting ready here.
Yeah, let's count down.
Okay, we're doing the countdown now from the school committee room. Going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the March 19th, 2026 meeting of the school committee. This is our extra March meeting focused on the budget. First up on our agenda is our consent agenda. We have our past records from February 26th, March 4th, and our accounts payable report. Would someone like to move the consent agenda?
I'll move it.
Sarah moves it, Suzanne seconds it. Donna, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Is Mariah online, Betsy? She's not. Okay, and I vote yes as well. Next up, we have public comment. First up is Joshua Paradise, followed by Josh Goldman. You have 3 minutes, and Betsy will start the timer when you're ready. Is Mr. Paradise online, or is he? Oh. Okay, so Josh Goldman, and then Sarah.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm Josh Goldman. My daughter Lily is a kindergartner at Lincoln School. Lily loves her school. She loves her amazing teacher, Mrs. Beezer. She skips and runs on our walks to school every morning. This past weekend, she took our family to school on Saturday and Sunday to play at the playground. When we ask her about her day over dinner, my wife and I hear just one recurring complaint, which is our teacher didn't let us outside for recess today. The reason is because the wellness policy in the district requires that children stay inside if the real field temperature is below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And my request to you today is to lower the threshold to 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit. It matters because recess is important. Kids need outdoor play, they need sunlight, fresh air, and so if we're going to deny them those benefits, then it should be clear that we're preventing real harm. The 20-degree threshold is unnecessarily conservative, and according to medical advice, and it's also out of step with other schools in the area. Medical safety standards are codified in the Child Care Weather Watch chart, which is used by many U.S. school districts. The caution zone starts at 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and the danger zone is below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The risk of frostbite on exposed skin in under 30 minutes doesn't become significant until wind chills are dropped below 0 Fahrenheit. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends against playing outside in outdoor temperatures below negative 15 degrees. Cambridge Public Schools leave it to principals' discretion with guidance to have indoor recess if the wind chill is below 10 Fahrenheit. For preschoolers, the Mass Department of Early Education and Care cautions that significant health risks begin at wind chills below 15. My younger daughter is 2.5. She attends an early childhood program in the Longwood area. The guidance there is everybody goes outside down to 15 and use discretion below 15. So for example, if it's a sunny day, they're more likely to go out. And maybe they'll take the toddlers out for 15 minutes instead of 30. Other parts of the country, of course, are much colder. And typically in very cold environments in northern New England and the upper Midwest, kids go outside at temperatures down to 0 and wind chills down to -10. And then finally, of course, here in Brookline, most of our student population walks to school. So we go outside at those temperatures, as we do. They're already outside in those conditions. So I would encourage you to lower the threshold to 10 or at least to 15 with principal's discretion to 10. We give kids more outdoor time, and we're going to do this without significant risk to any of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joshua Paradise, followed by Sarah Gortz.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Paradise, and I'm a PSB parent. First, I want to thank you, the members of the school committee, the entire administrative team, and more broadly, the amazing teachers and educators across the district. I'm so grateful for your commitment, your hard work, and your passion. In the last budget crisis, I came before this same body with comments directed at then Superintendent Dr. Guillory and the then school committee saying, trust, once lost, is difficult to regain. As much as I love the public schools of Brookline and appreciate the work you are all doing, I cannot ignore the past. When I say you lost trust, I mean the institution of the public schools, not the individuals here tonight. You lost trust by asking for an override to preserve foreign language and then canceling K-5 foreign language programs. You lost trust by spending nearly $750 million on new buildings without a plan for how to pay for the people and activities that give those buildings value. You lost trust by causing our most talented high school students to stress over whether there's enough space in AP classes for them to take the challenging courses they seek. You lost trust by reimagining ninth grade social studies without any plan for how to measure the program's success. You lost trust by agreeing to a union contract without a plan for how to pay for it. You lost trust by setting a strategy that measures the shortfalls among our low-performing students while showing no commitment to improving outcomes for our top academic performers. You lost trust by seeking to address disparities at the high school without examining how the K-8 system allowed those gaps to become so wide. And you are losing trust by presenting this override as the only option to avoid calamity, without, it seems, considering all options for savings. I appreciate that you are working to regain trust, but I fear it is not enough. Tonight, I urge you not to treat the taxpayers of Brookline as an unlimited source of funds. Compromises need to come from all sides. The recent 642-page report from the Expenditures and Revenue Study Committee identifies other sources of potential savings, and you should ensure that an override is conditional on achieving those savings. Several of note, medical insurance premiums are identified as budget busters. The 83% share the town pays is, according to the report, generous compared to comparable communities. Contractual steps and cost of living increases must be aligned with available resources. The alternative is to cut hundreds of union jobs. And finally, I urge you to broaden the discussion to optional programs that are not revenue neutral. The report identifies BEEP and METCO.
Ms. Gewertz, followed by Ms. Pollack.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Gewertz, and I'm first going to speak on behalf of the Friends of the Performing Arts at BHS. We know that if the override doesn't pass, there will be significant, difficult cuts across the district. One of those cuts is a proposal to eliminate our amazing 4th through 8th grade conservatory program, which will remove all instrumental and choral music for those grades in our elementary schools, and our middle schools will no longer have any music education. As you know, our conservatory program in Brookline, every 4th grader selects an instrument to play for the year. This continues in 5th grade with the addition of chorus and band and orchestra. And 6th through 8th graders, our middle school students, have many choices of 6 different options. For many students, conservatory is just the start of a journey that will continue throughout middle school and high school and hopefully beyond. This amazing opportunity was only possible because the district provides it. This year, 500 4th graders are learning an instrument for the first time, and 86 low-income students are receiving those instruments free of charge. In these classes, our students aren't just developing musical skills. They are learning how to listen, collaborate, and contribute to something larger than themselves. We also recognize that conservatory is just a pipeline to the unbelievable music program at the high school. It is a program that meets the diverse needs of our students and supports students at all levels of abilities and interest. It's a program that levels the playing field, offering every student, regardless of income or background, the opportunity to learn an instrument and participate in large ensembles. It is not possible to replace this outside of public schools of Brookline. While families with sufficient resources and musical experiences find ways to provide those outside of the school, these opportunities are completely eliminated for many children who will be left without access and never have the chance to realize their potential. This is unacceptable to communities in Brookline that value both equity and the arts. Now, switching hats, I'm going to speak as a parent of 3 children in the Brookline Public Schools, each of whom has taken part in this amazing performing arts program. My 10th grader is taking 3 simultaneous full-year performing arts classes this year, and I'm incredibly thankful that his sophomore schedule has been able to accommodate this. And of course, that Brookline has amazing, robust courses in performing arts at the high school. I'm obviously incredibly proud of his musical accomplishments, but most importantly, I would never have guessed when he started in 4th grade on the trumpet that we would be at this point. This is a kid who had very little frustration tolerance for completing his homework, reading books, and doing other challenging things. Practicing his trumpet is something I've never had to force because it was his music passion and his choice. But the lessons he's learned in patience, hard work, and frustration tolerance have pervaded his academic and non-academic music and non-academic life. It's true of so many students who find their passions in music, art, sports, or whatever, to have them bolster their academic success because of those things. It is proven and well-researched evidence in support of the performing arts. So speaking on behalf of all parents whose children have participated in or are looking forward to participating in our conservatory program, we ask you to recognize the value of the program in this community and vote against cuts to the performing arts department. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Neera Pollack, and I'm also speaking on behalf of Brookline High School's Friends of Performing Arts. We're a not-for-profit organization made up of many parents and caregivers who support the arts. And we want to begin by acknowledging the reality of this challenging moment. We know that if the override does not pass, or if a smaller override than needed actually passes, there will be painful cuts across the district, including the possibilities of lost positions, larger class sizes, fewer key supports for our students. We understand that, and we know that there are no easy choices. But my goal in speaking tonight is to make it clear that eliminating any of the key components of our highly effective and deeply valued PSB Performing Arts program would dismantle a core element of a Brookline education. You just heard another faux pas parent speak about the impact of the proposal to cut our 4th to 8th grade conservatory program. And last year, when a similar proposal was made, nearly 1,000 PSB parents and alumni quickly signed a letter in support of preserving conservatory and our performing arts program. And you may remember that I stood here a year ago and read that letter. And now we're again facing the possible elimination of this beloved program and additional possible cuts to the performing arts program in drama, dance, and music. So I'm here again to communicate how important the PSB Performing Arts program is to our community and the dramatic impact cuts to the program would have on the students' lives. The Performing Arts program at the high school is a crown jewel of PSB. Accomplished students training, performing, multiple bands, orchestras, choruses, a cappella, dance, theater classes, productions. These experiences propel BHS students into advanced performing arts groups in college, to careers in the arts, and most importantly, lifelong joy. And the strength of the performing arts at BHS is a major reason that many of us choose to live in Brookline and send our children to BHS, knowing that they will thrive there. The performing arts program is strong because of the robust training and experience that students receive in the conservatory program. Growth as an artist requires lessons and practice, but it really relies on shared experience in an ensemble. And we all know that the value of arts education to mental health and development of personal, social performance and leadership skills and to community development can't be overstated. Cutting conservatory is not a, quote, reduction. It's an elimination with profound consequences that are immediate, permanent, and inequitable. Currently, access to music and performing arts is part of the school day for every PSB student. But if this access disappears, families with resources may be able to fund arts education through other means, but many students will completely lose access to the performing arts. And critically, if you remove the 4th to 8th grade pathway, you eliminate the pipeline that feeds the amazing ensembles at BHS, and you will decimate those programs. This impact will not be limited to music. The BHS drama and dance programs are also specifically built on the artistic and ensemble skills that students develop in conservatory. So in addition to the proposed cut to conservatory, we want to communicate the impact of possible cuts to performing arts faculty at BHS. In this school year, 833 students are taking BHS performing arts classes. They put on more than 30 evening performances attended by the community, friends, and families. Musical skills learned in conservatory have propelled 500 students into ensembles and music classes, 100 students in dance classes, 200 students in drama classes, almost finished, and 365 students involved in 6 after-school productions run by our teachers who dedicate over 1,000 hours to after-hours rehearsals. These performing arts programs are open to all students, regardless of learning style. They support students at all levels of ability. They are rich, inclusive, valued, and a core part of the PSB education. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Next, we have our FY27 proposed budget review, discussion, and possible vote. Superintendent Wong.
Okay, thank you. I think Betsy will run our slides for us, and as she's pulling those up, As I present tonight, I just reflected every budget has a story, and this story has been evolving. So I want to remind everyone that on the Brookline Public Schools website, there is a section that's called Budget Central, and just to encourage everyone to go there, and you can see all the budget presentations that have been made. You can see now several, what we're calling them FAQs, documents that are there. You can also see on the town website are also budget documents, and so this story has been evolving, and there's just it's hard to come in at one point and really understand that everything that's come before and all that will move forward. And so tonight is a funding update and also an overview of the funding options. Since we've been talking about the budget, you've seen our initial projection. You've heard about town allocation, or the capacity of the town allocation, and then our funding gaps, and then some ideas about what would happen if funding alternatives were not found and the impacts of that. So this is more to that point. And so in the next slide, we do have new information around the GIC health insurance. So the GIC health insurance, or GIC, is the health insurance that the employees of the town, including those of the schools, provide that benefit. And recently, the premium for the GIC health insurance was determined, and it's lower than what was initially projected. And so that means there's a greater capacity for allocation on the town to allocate for the town departments and the school department. And so the increase in the allocation to the public schools of Brookline is $726,274. So that's good news. So it was an increase in allocation to the town and to the schools. And just to reflect too that it's a 59% allocation, 41% to the town. And so we appreciate that allocation to the school department. What this means, it reduces the funding gap by that much. And so the next slide, sorry, let's stay here. So this is the updated slide about how we've been funded through the past fiscal years, FY23, 24, 25 to the current year, and what we're projecting for the next 3 years, FY27, FY28, FY29. You can see where our projections for increase are and the changes in the allocation projected from the town. And you can see that for next year, the allocation has been increased from the town to $2,466,980, which is an increase from approximately $1.7 million. Unfortunately, for FY28, the allocation is a negative $90,469, so that's a change from previous report. And then FY29, the town allocation projected is a negative $441,801. Thank you. Oh, so thank you. I thought, yeah, thank you, Mariah. And at the top, you can see that the allocation. So it's just a negative number that impacts our projected increases, but also standing budget as it goes forward. So the initial funding gap where it stood has improved to where the funding gap where it is now. And so on the bottom line, the total funding gap for FY27, 28, and 29 is now $17,944,439. I do want to bring your attention to the projected increases in the FY27, 28, and 29. The projected increases are at 4.91%, 3.68%, 4.57%, and how that compares to the previous years of FY23, 24, 25, and 26. And so we have really strived to keep our increases in check, and have made an effort. But so what you're seeing is a gap that comprise mostly of projected increases for the next 3 years. They involve no new programming. Great. Next slide, please. There's not too many slides, but I defer to the chair. Okay.
There aren't very many slides.
Okay. And to the point in public comment, the district has strived hard to be financially mindful, and actually there has been reduction in programming since the last override, which included the loss of the K-5 World Language Program, math and literacy coaches. And also in this year, since our initial projection of a recommended budget from 155.6 million to 149.8 million, representing a net reduction of 5.8 million. So that I have to thank the team and the school committee members, and actually comments from the public that helped guide us in the way we've looked at the budget. But this reflects a net loss of 22.1 FTE for next year, reductions in tuitions and transportation account lines. We've reduced technology and technology support, student academic supports reflected in our paras and plus ones, and we've right-sized staffing for our projected enrollment with no further loss of programs. So we're actually very proud that we've been able to fine-tune, reduce our account lines, but we have saved programs with the projected proposed budget for FY27. We've also launched new revenue-generating options for FY27, reflecting and taking input from comment from our committees that have offered suggestions, and also reflection within our own membership on the board, and working with our staff on doing that. So much has been looked at and refined that our non-salary expenses in the proposed FY27 budget now stand at 12.5%. Typically, in school budgets from town to town, it's usually at 85% salary, 15% non-salary expense. We've been fine-tuning as much as possible our expenses, of course with the goal and our shared goal of protecting all our resources for direct instruction with students and direct support. So we are now, our non-salary expenses are now at 12.5% of the budget. Next slide, please. So we feel we've taken a hard look at reductions that could be made, again, to protect programs and supports for our students. And so I will say at this point, when we anticipate the possibility of further reductions, there are no good reductions as we look forward. Expenses are lean. Any further reductions will necessarily impact staffing. And so district level positions will remain understaffed. So in our projection, we've reduced some more at the district level in order to add a district level person for basically data analytics, but will remain understaffed. Further reductions will affect those with most direct contact with students. And this is a reflection of what we've done our best to be able to eliminate everything else first. Additional reductions to staffing will move general education classes or caseloads above guidance because we've already right-sized the numbers for our guidance levels. It will eliminate educational programs. It will eliminate enrichment options and electives, and it will reduce general academic and counseling supports embedded in our systems defined by MTSS. And I do note that historically, and this is why we are so mindful of this, reductions once taken are almost impossible to restore because you end up having to fund what you already have, and then you have to ask for an increase to restore what you've already, once you've taken a reduction. And so it's just something that we're very mindful of and have been tried to be extremely protective as we created the budget for FY27 and in the out years. Next slide, please. So there are operating override options being considered. I know that that has been fairly communicated through town administration, and it's also been in local media. So I know that this is not news to people, and so I am comfortable to be able to outline those options in this context from the school department. There are, at this time, until they're voted, they're at this time, and things can change, but at this time, there is an option to fully fund the public schools of Brookline and town needs together in a phased, over a 3-year period. So to fully fund the needs of both the town and the schools. There is a second option to fully fund the schools and the town, again, over the next few years, but that would be an override that would consider taking more money in the first year and then spreading it out, using that money in ways that you're able to fully fund the 3 years, but with an asterisk in that it would cause a funding cliff for FY30. So fully fund our needs as projected for FY27, 28, and 29, but would leave a funding gap or a deficit for FY30. The reason is because the money that would be taken in the first year added to the base of the budgets for the next 3 years would not equal increasing the base over 3 years. So what happens is you meet all your needs through FY29, but what you used in FY29 isn't necessarily fully reflected in what went into the base for FY29, which creates a deficit to cover, and then whatever increases you would need for FY30. And I say that, and this is where I say go to Budget Central and then look at all the notes, and it will help you understand that as well. A third option being considered is not fully funding the requests as presented at this time by the town and by the public schools of Brookline, but to fund at 86% of the projected request for the proposed revenue gap. I think it's to be determined if it would be over a 3-year period or would it be in an amount taken up in the first year. And so if it were an amount to be taken in the first year, to be mindful that it would create a funding gap between FY29 and FY30 that would need to be overcome when you create the FY30 budget. Next slide, please. So the impacts to the public schools of Brookline, depending on the outcome. Option 1 would yield the proposed budget for FY27 as presented on February 5th in the amount at the start of this presentation. So again, we've revised our projections from that time to where it is now. So right now, the most current one is the one stated in this slide presentation, but it would yield the proposed budget. And again, to remind everyone, all the reductions we've made to be able to present that budget. Option 2 would yield
Ella,
this.
can I just a clarification? Since February 5th, you made a couple more edits, right? So this is a little bit later? Because you had removed another 2.6 FTE, right?
After February 5th.
Yeah, it was the 26th.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that I understand. 6th, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So it's, thank you.
Thank you. Option 2 would yield the same result as option 1 with being able to cover our projected needs for the next 3 years, but again, would create a funding cliff for FY30. Option 3 would yield as follows, some more detail. So this is the option 3. Next slide, please. Option 3 would be funding, not fully funding the request as presented, but at 86%. So in consultation with the principals, senior leadership team met and looked at additional reductions that would be reflected. At 86% of funding, The reductions, the further reductions to PSB would equal $2,502,222. Okay. Some of these reductions were already listed if there's no override at all, or if there is an override option, it fails to pass. So there's nothing on this list that wasn't already identified previously. So it was a very difficult conversation in terms of how you differentiate the things that were already identified for a completely non-override situation. And so this is where, if this were option 3, if option 3 were to pass, these were the things that would be reduced, which is better than not having any override option pass. But these would be the reductions that would happen. Next slide, please. It might be the final slide. Nope. All right, so this is, no, it's not. So the refresher. Again, we really appreciate that options for override are being discussed. We also appreciate what that means, the impact to citizens of the town, because it is asking for an increase in taxes that are being paid by the residents. So we totally, completely appreciate that. But we are also appreciative that options for an override are being discussed. If an override option is chosen to be presented to the community, or options, but none of them pass, or no option for override is offered, a failed override or no override would result in a total staff reduction of 210.3 FTEs, representing 14.5% of all staff. And remember, most of that staff left for reduction are ones that are working with students most directly. Year 1, and so we have laid out in previous presentations what that looks like. So in year 1, with a no override scenario, we did our best to avoid impacts to classroom sizes, but it would end up, we would end up losing the grade 6 through 8 world language. It would end our 4 through 8 conservatory program. It would reduce grade 1 staffing, meaning the paraprofessionals would be reduced by half across all 8 schools. It would increase our high school class size and reduce high school supports reflected primarily in +1, but also in other staffing associated with some of our specialized programs. It's important to note that in a scenario with no override and the cuts that would happen for FY27, the budget will still increase for FY23 and FY23. In the initial slide, as I said, in a non-override scenario, the town allocation for increase would be negative 90,000 in year 2 and over negative 500,000 for year 3. So the budget will continue to increase. The town's capacity for allocation to cover that increase actually goes negative in year 2 and year 3. So this is why in a non-override scenario, there would be additional reductions in year 2 and again in year 3. So cumulatively, those reductions would be K through 8 class size averaging 30.3, an increase of 56%, and 36% of classrooms would be closed. At the high school, the class averages would go to 26 to 34, and to be mindful that when we're talking about class averages of 26 and 34, the range of classes can be +4 or -4 on either side of that. It would end our +1 program, which is a primary support for MTSS, generalized support for students, additional academic and sometimes social support for our students. There would be also questions of safety and compliance, reductions of our security aides on campus, but also the class size and reduction of ratio of adults to students for academic and non-academic supports for our students. And there is a question of how we would meet our 990. And other questions about compliance with that tremendous amount of reduction. So again, in a non-override scenario, there would be reductions in year 1, but they would continue to be reductions in year 2 and 3. The town's capacity to allocate to cover increases diminishes with each year outgoing from year 2 and year 3. Next slide, please. Is that the vote? All right. Prior to the vote, I wanted to return to the thoughts of our community and wanted to be sure that we do appreciate that the options of a tax override impact every single member of our community and in the amount of the taxes that they're currently asked to support our programs, but also additionally, if an override option were put forth for their consideration and if an override option were to be approved. So I want to say that the proposed FY27 budget recommended for your consideration represents our considered efforts to meet our fiduciary obligations to be responsive to all members of this community. It is highly streamlined financially to be respectful of townwide and individual constraints and designed to meet the needs of all of our students, as talented and diverse as they might be, to fulfill our aspirational goals for them as well as the ones they have for themselves. In building this proposal, we recognize the juxtaposition of the weight of the request and the understanding that any reductions made are almost impossible to restore at a future date. It embodies our commitment to offer you our best due diligence as this community considers its next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Wong. We'll go to questions and discussion. Carolyn and then Jesse.
Couple clarifying questions from the presentation. So, Bella, when you say option 1 to yield the proposed budget, et cetera, yield in the 3 options, does that correspond to the change from your first slide where now the gap over 3 years is 17,944, 439, that's now the ask from the school department to the select board? That you're reducing the amount that you're asking for?
So that's my recommendation for this board's consideration to send forth. Yeah, so it's been reduced. The ask has been reduced by the
Okay.
change in the GIC.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I have a couple quick questions like that. Option 2, I guess I'm not following super closely the different options because I'm on a need to know basis, like they'll decide and then that's what we'll deal with. I thought Chaz had talked about an option that kind of created a reserve, and I thought that was the option 2, like the lump sum, and then there's kind of a reserve at the end. That's what this 2 is.
So could I restate it as well?
Yeah.
Actually, it probably all the options bear restating because because we're talking about multi-year. So I think in the first option, people understand the request over 3 years, which means the tax rate would increase over that period of time to yield what was enough to support
Yep.
the town and school needs. The second option is to take a sum of money more than you need for year one, but less than the request over 3 years.
Yep,
But if you take more of it in the first year,
I understand.
you use what you need for the first year, the remainder is in a reserve and invested, I assume. And so the thought is there's enough for the second year,
Yep.
use that, and the remainder is in reserve and invested. And then in the third year, it's available. But what you took in the first year becomes the base for the 3 years. And you may have spent more than was in the base over that 3-year period. That difference is what becomes, I just can't think of a better word, but the difference is what you have to kind of make up for to be where you ended up in FY29 plus anticipated increase for FY30.
So this is where you're
That's the second option.
and that's what you mean by a cliff?
Sure.
So there's a couple ways to structure number 2. And I don't think we know how the select board will structure it, obviously. But you could have it, there's a range, which is still less than option 1, and it could be exactly enough to fund the town and schools for the 3 years. Or you could increase it a little bit to offset that third year cliff, and it's still less than option 1. Doesn't quite cover the cliff of year 3, so there's a little bit of a range there.
And it's less because you're putting some of it aside? Why is it less?
Because you're requesting it earlier in year 1 and putting it in a reserve fund. So instead of asking for $1 this year, $1 next year, and $1 3 years from now, you're asking for basically $2 this year, and then you've got $2 from this year and $2 from next year, and so it's flat. But then at the end of that, you have $1, right? Does that help sort of? At the end of 3 years, you've taken $2 this year, $2 next year, and you still have $1 at the end.
Get
That's
to put in
kind
an
of-
investment account. So.
Yes, and then then there's the little bit of pennies you have from the investment.
And that's the structure. That's not the math.
That's the structure. Yeah, it's definitely not the math. I wish it was $2 math.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
No.
And then I guess so that's what you're talking, Bella, about, you're calling it a cliff or like a not enough, potentially not enough in year 3.
And if there's a different term, it's
It's the term that's being used.
It's the term that's
Yeah.
being used, and so
Okay.
I'm trying to explain what is meant by
Okay,
that.
and
Yeah.
that's helpful because
Yeah.
in my mind, what I'm hearing is that at the end of 2030 anyway, presumably we have a big gap again. So that sounded to me like the same as cliff, but I understand the cliff is within the structure of the override.
It should be noted too, like why would something like that even be presented? Because I think we've all been working hard to streamline our budgets, and we also know what the impact is that we're asking, community members to pay more. And so the reason this is being proposed is because it's a lower ask over that period, but it's a bigger ask up front, but it's a lower ask cumulatively, and that's why. And but it creates a funding challenge later.
But is the impact on the taxpayer not more because the base is established so high? So so you're saying if you can repeat what, yeah, but I just want to sorry,
It's
the
good to
thing
ask
you
the
said
question.
was,
Yeah.
when you say I don't remember what you said. So the revenue collected is slightly lower than what you want, but we're taxing the taxpayers on a higher base that was established in year 1.
No.
Okay.
I would say it differently. The revenue collected, assuming that this, the upfront one was at exactly the amount to get you
Yeah.
through the 3 years, the revenue collected is the same. If they adjust it so that there's the cushion for the out year, it increases a little bit. I think the issue is that,
Okay.
the issue is that when you phase it, you actually set up the base for the long term in a much better situation than you do if you front load the funds in the first 2 years.
Like in your toy examples of option 1 and option 2, am I right in understanding that, like, under option 1, by the end of the 3 years, our base would have gone up by $3, whereas in option 2, it'd only have gone up by $2?
Exactly.
That's kind of the cliff that's being talked about.
Exactly, exactly.
Jesse? Can't hear you, Jesse.
It says turn up volume. Is it our problem that we can't hear?
Hold on, we're trying to figure out if we have our volume problem, Jesse. Jesse, if you just hold on, Betsy's gonna go check it out with Big. We go to other people and then back? That's okay? Bob?
Yeah. I know we don't have the exact numbers yet from the different options, but again, to clarify for me, that option 1 gives us 24 million bucks in the first year. Some of which we use and some of it, a lot of it we invest.
Option 1, the resident taxes would increase over the 3 years. So that's option 1. And it would increase the base along with that. Option 2 is taking the increase in the first year, but not as much as you would have
Right.
taken over the 3-year period. And then through using reserve and investment, you're able to cover the request through the 3 years, but you won't have changed the base as
So
much.
in the option where you invest a bunch of money, do we have any idea right now how much the investment will pay off over the next 2 years? Do we know that, Mariah?
The calculations that the town is using are conservatively estimating a 2% rate of return.
2%?
Yeah. This is 3 years, and so it's,
Right.
yeah, there's not a lot of time here to compound, Bob.
You know, that you can't get a 5, 6, 7% interest.
I'm just telling you how the town is doing it. I don't think it's necessarily.
Because I'm just trying to, in my own head, I just want to find out how much income we can earn if we front load the thing. Okay.
Jesse? I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm getting like an infinite loop on my screen at this end. I'm sorry. I don't know why. Number 1, as I understand it, even with option 1, although Bella didn't say it, there will not be additional funds available to continue in FY31 without another override. And so so it wasn't said, but it's important that people understand that even if we go with option 1, which is the highest tax levy, at the end, while we'll fund just about everything with some trimming around the edges, we'll be back 3 years from now doing the same thing again. That's my first comment. Just important that people know that. Second thing is the option 2. If you take a look at page 9 in our ERC report, explains that we're going to front load the tax levy next year and cover the full deficit for the town and schools. So what'll happen is you get a larger initial tax levy raise, but a lower total override. And you'll take that extra money, as Bob just pointed out, and put it in an interest-bearing stabilization fund to be used by town and schools. What would happen is the tax levy would immediately increase, and it'd be a little more jarring than option 1, which would be the lower levy. And what would happen is we'd have some excess levy capacity in 27 and 28. That's the money that would go into the stabilization fund. And since it only goes in year after year, Bob, there isn't a whole lot of base to build on, as Mariah said, in the next 1 or 2 years after. This would allow the town and the schools to hit the current projected gap for the next 3 years, and it would reduce the override, by around $4.5 million from the 23.6 to the 18.6. It'll also give us some additional leeway to try to figure out how to get out of the same fiscal mess 3 years from now. But it should be clear to everybody, and we said it in the ERSC report, that in none of the 3 cases do we solve our town's fiscal problem past the 3 years. In one case, we're going for a large state record override at option 1, with the risk that it's such a large number that it won't pass at all. Option 2 allows us some flexibility, but that money that's in that stabilization fund is going to get used up during FY 28 and 29. If you take a look at the chart on number 9, there's no money left at the end of that. And so it's not like we have any dollars left for us to utilize as we begin looking at FY 31. In all 3 cases, we come around again to the exact same position we are in this year, which is to try to understand how to balance the rising cost of running our town and schools with decreasing revenue or flat revenue. Those are the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Mariah?
I just want to make a couple comments, which is, I appreciate what you're saying, Jesse, about we don't know what's going to happen in 30. But I also, and we could be back where we might be, but also I'm not sure of that either. And I don't want us to tell everyone that it's a foregone conclusion that we're having an override for FY30 when we just don't have that information. And there's so many moving parts at this point, and it's really clear at the state level that there is like massive municipal stress across the board, and something needs to change. And this isn't just a Brookline problem. And so I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm also saying that there's a lot of different factors at play here that we should account
Consider.
for. Yeah, that we should consider, exactly.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. That's true.
I just want, yeah. And then one comment I wanted to make, Bella, and this was about, I was sort of thinking about the things you wrote on slide, the one that says no good options for further reduction. Because the things that you wrote there really apply to the 86% option, the additional cuts you've had to make, which is like the cuts that are proposed in the 14% reduction, the one that I believe the select board has most clearly requested, right? That we focused on that one tonight because it's sort of, it seems the direction where the select board is going, and it's mid-tier request. I just want to emphasize, as I was thinking about it, like the cuts that you are, like the cuts that are making there, they're not painless cuts. That 14% is coming out of like this is not fat, this is bone we're talking about. And so thinking about district level positions remaining understaffed and the reductions hitting students, it's funny because it's not really funny, but you said expenses are lean, any further reductions will necessarily impact staffing. With that said, you did make cuts to, it's not good cuts, but the FFE budget did get cut. The thinking about fees, so you've managed to mitigate some of the staffing in this proposed cut, but there are significant cuts there, and I just want to emphasize, like, these cuts mean the things that you wrote on that slide, which is the reductions are moving general education classes or caseloads above guidance, they're eliminating programming, they're eliminating enrichment options and electives, and they're reducing general and academic counseling supports. So it's really important. And as you say, like, these reductions are impossible to restore. We heard some really moving public comment earlier about conservatory and the elimination, which is still, unfortunately, while world language is not under this mid-tier proposal, conservatory is. And like, this is like, these are really, really impactful cuts still. And people might think, oh, well, it's only 14%, it's only $2.5 million. But this is the point at which the budget is at, that when we're making these kinds of cuts at this level, we are unfortunately still affecting programs. So I feel like it's really important to say, oh, it's not just nibbles. Like, unfortunately, we're at the point where programming is going to, and where it is directly impacting students. Teaching positions, athletics, which we just added in the last override because we know how valuable and important our athletics program is too. So sorry while I harp on those, but it's a lot.
Suzanne and then Bella.
Yeah, Mariah, I'm a little confused. This slide that says no override or failed override, that is if there is no override or it fails. That's not,
That's not the one I'm referring to.
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry.
pointing to the one that
oh,
says.
the one above. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, not the one above. No good options for further reduction. If you look on the back of your
Oh,
first
sorry.
page,
Okay, that's
just
fine.
pointing out, yeah, that, like, they've already taken a whole bunch of cuts to get to the
Right.
149.8, or whatever it is, 149.8, right? Million dollar budget. And these further cuts, yes, you know, this is, 14% off of the override ask, but we're already to the bone, and these are really, really tough cuts to take on top of all the other cuts you've already made.
So this is, again, just because I was on the wrong slide, sorry. So looking at the no good options, that is if we were at the 86%.
Yeah.
That passed.
Right, so
We would
the,
still have
so the
to
select
focus.
board has asked us to look at an 86% option. And that's what that is.
Gotcha. And that's,
Sorry, Bella and then Donna.
thank you.
To say more about why I said there were no good options for further reduction, because we looked really hard to make the reductions that we thought would streamline our expenses but retain the strength of programs for students. We've looked for it all already. And so any further reductions, whether it were a 10% reduction or it's the next reductions that if there were options for further reduction, we already would have done it because we were facing such a gap. And I think it's probably still worth pointing out that the amounts that we're looking at for the next 3 years are really pretty comparable to the increase in dollar amount over the last 3 years. And for anyone who manages budgets to be able to do that means we had to make a lot of reductions to make that work. But to Jesse's point that he made, we also recognize that there are structural things in the way we operate that we can collaboratively, cooperatively work with the town and our own staff to see what we can do to mitigate. But those are options that need more time than we are able to do in short. So we would keep working on trying to find ways to refine what we do operationally with the objective of maintaining programs for students. And when I say no good options for further reduction, I am worried about loss of program because the implications are that they're really, really hard to restore once they've been eliminated.
Donna?
Thanks. I think I might need additional clarification on what Suzanne was saying, because I thought option 3 was the fund at the 86%, right? So isn't that the slide above, isn't that the override option 3 slide? The one, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought, okay, doesn't matter. On the override option 3 slide, are the cuts that are reflected here happening at the same ratio, Bella, that you've described in the past, the 40-60? Is it 40-60 split?
Yes, and so we always, as I said, when we approached the reductions, the new set that we needed to do, we first looked to district level, and then what was left, we looked at a 60-40% ratio between the pre-K-8 and the high school. I say pre-K-8 because I always want to include pre-K-8. We always have them in mind, but honestly, there is not much practical reduction you can do for that age group period. But we do want to include them, that we did consider pre-K-8 as well. And why 60-40? It somewhat mirrors where the student population is. So we said it's where the students are at.
And I don't have my, I can't find my glasses, so I can't read the numbers exactly, but for conservatory, it's, okay, 7 FTE. So what? Is that for this year? This is for 27 at that 86% funding.
At the mid-level override.
So what's the impact of that? Does that mean, what does that
No
mean?
conservatory.
Say that again?
No conservatory.
No conservatory, so that would eliminate conservatory for, oh, sorry. Oh, you might be, for grade 6, 7, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And also, actually eliminates music entirely for 6, 7, and 8. In grades 4 and 5, they have one general music and one conservatory.
Right.
So 4 and 5 would still have music, but it'd be once a week and no conservatory.
So would you be able to talk a little bit more about the rationale behind choosing that as opposed to other things, or?
So again, we looked at this in collaboration with the principals, and so they were protecting class size. So to keep in mind when I say if there was a good, if there was reduction, we made it. And so one of the first things we did was right size the classes, meaning we went to guidance. So there are, if you eliminate any, if we could eliminate a section and stay within guidance, we did. So that means any further reductions to the class sections will bring them over to guidance. But the way it is, it's a big difference. So one example I chose with, if you have 3 sections of 17, because there are 51 students at that grade level, you reduce 1, you're now at 25 and 26. So when you reduce 1 teacher at a grade level, the impact is so we decided to do our best to protect the class sizes, and so we went to program. There was also a feeling about trying to be have it to be equal across the 8 schools, and so that's why we also looked at program.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to have an opportunity? So I had sent some questions about the 4+1 structure.
This is the time, so ask your question
Okay.
through Bella.
So I guess some of my questions are, can you talk about the process that you went through when you were looking at the 4+1s? And I know it's identified in the no override scenario, but whether that would be an option to restore some other programs in the K-8s or even across the high school, can you talk a little bit about the decision-making that went on there?
I do think that it was a fair assumption to do the 60-40 where the students are. And also, as I've come to understand the +1, it's a novel, it's actually not a structure I've known before, but actually as I've come to understand it better and better, I actually feel it's quite ingenious, the +1. So you have teachers teaching 4 classes and then the +1 assignment. And the +1 assignment is generally tutorial or other support for students. So it may be department specific, or it may be more general tutorial or skill based. So the research shows actually the best support for that kind of general academic intervention are the classroom teachers. And so it ensures that teachers are the ones that are being used for those kind of supports. And that's not so there are other school districts that have teachers teaching 4, but they don't have this other piece where they're ensuring that teachers are fully involved with interventions like this.
But not all of the +1s are academic. And
Some of them are social supports as well. And I think too, definitely so MTSS has an academic and social component, and Matt Dubois has been here presenting. We're at a place to know that you cannot really separate the supports and hope for the outcomes that you want to have for students. So MTS is both an academic and a social component.
No, absolutely. But for example, one of the +1s is the teachers, mentoring teachers. I'm not by even having this conversation, I'm not suggesting that's not important. I just think it's, this is the place where we need to ask questions so that we can understand and we can
Absolutely.
respond to our stakeholders as well.
Yes.
So one of the questions I had asked about the plus ones was, how is the determination made? How is it determined what qualifies for a plus one and what doesn't? Because there is I think there may have been a shift from the previous year to this year, moving some of the programs from a plus one, from stipends to plus ones, based on emails that, based on some of the numbers that Hal and Anthony submitted last year.
Sure.
So I'm curious about how a decision is made, whether something qualifies for a plus one or not. Originally, obviously, when the plus ones were created, it was specifically for tutorial, and it's expanded since then. So I'm curious about the rationale.
Sure. And also, Principal Myers and Assistant Headmaster.
Out of school, yes.
Yes, head of school. They were not able to be here tonight, and so we anticipated there would be questions on plus one. So Robin, and actually several of us have met with them extensively, but Robin probably the most extensively. So if she would, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, they are largely around tutorial, different types of tutorials for students, both academic and social emotional. There are some other plus one assignments within the schedule, again, largely in support of students. Just reminding that some of the plus ones have already been cut in the proposed budget. And so some of the places where they may have added some in recent years, those will be places where they would be reducing. And so we haven't named specific plus ones, but all of the things that you've mentioned are under consideration for how they reevaluate the plus one, because with the reduction of them, they have to reevaluate them as a whole. So I think that's how I would answer that without Anthony and Hal here to talk a little bit more specifically about all of the decisions that they've been having with their team as they've tried to navigate this.
And were you able to talk with them about how they determine whether an assignment qualifies for a plus one?
Well, an assignment again, it's generally been when it is that academic support. It's through different various tutorials.
But they're not all academic.
But there's a few one-offs.
Yeah,
And
okay.
again, those decisions have been made over time, and some of those decisions are some of the first that will be considered as we try to maintain academic support and social emotional support for students.
So I have definitely asked a lot of questions about what merits a plus one, who gets them, and the things that are on the list for it. So teachers mentor. Yeah, thank you. The state actually requires us to have a mentoring program in place. So mentoring actually is a really important and powerful tool. Teachers in the classroom are the best to coach teachers that are new, and everything is for the benefit of the students. And so the most important thing happening in the district is that interaction between adult and student. That's the most important part. So it supports that, enhances that relationship with students and gets them to be where we need to be as fast as they can be, like in their first, second, or third year. So it is an important function. And where I say this is ingenious structure is that you have teachers already there available and you can assign it to them. I'm assuming the people that are assigned to it are good at it.
They're coordinating at
Yeah.
the school.
Yeah.
And is there an evaluation structure for that program? So you had told me earlier that there's a director, but, so in other words.
You mean of the tutorial?
Right, so
Yes.
how are we evaluating that,
The program as a whole, or the individuals within the program?
the individuals within the program? Is that part of the evaluation structure for the school?
So it is in some cases. So again, they work with the department leaders to support teachers that are working in tutorial to ensure that
that time is being used well and that they're able to coach students. They are a Unit B position, so they are able to contribute to evaluations of teachers that are working within the tutorial program.
And my final question, and then I'll pass it off to whoever else is next in line. But are you able to reassure folks who have had questions about whether an educator can be in a +1 block, like, and collecting a stipend at the same time? Are you able to reassure us that that does not happen?
That's not happening. Sometimes there are programs that there might be a +1 for something that happens during the day, and there might be a stipend for something that's happening in the after-school hours. So an example of that would be like in FX math, where there might be a tutorial that's happening during the school day, and that's a +1. That's not a stipend. And there's after-school support that's happening, and that stipend is for the after-school support.
And summer,
it may not be
right?
the
So
same
there's-
person,
Right.
right? Like
And
it
there's
could be-
summer stipends,
and there's
too, for
summer
that.
stipends
Yeah.
and things like that. So you might see the same type of or same name show up in a couple of different places, but they're sometimes for totally different people and for different activities happening at different times.
Thank you.
Carolyn?
I also have some questions about 4+1 that I've asked, and I'll say them. So my general concern, or my general curiosity here, especially as we have had some information trickling in, is whether there is slack in, I'm calling it slack, for lack of a better word, whether there's slack in this system, particularly in tutorial, which I love. I have no interest in compromising tutorial. I think it's great. But from what we've started to see, yet without the full transparency of the information, is whether it's overstaffed, maybe. We got some information that there are, I think, first it said 49, maybe it's 43 educators assigned to tutorial as their +1, but we weren't told, we haven't been provided with the information which I have asked for, how many sections that is, how many students per section, basically what the ratios are. So the course catalog says it's a 12-2, 12 students, 2 teachers. So my question is whether in practice the ratio is lower. Are there more teachers? I can speak from personal experience, and you can see it in the information that was provided to the ENRSC. It looks like there are tutorials that have 4 and even 6 teachers, and we don't know how many students there are. So in my view, we need that information in order to understand whether there's slack there, and whether, so that means, and this is also talked about in the report, in the ENRSC report, are we optimizing our contract? Are we optimizing our teachers' time such that we can provide our program with better efficiency and not have to lay people off? So for me, that information is still missing
So I
broadly. And sorry,
Oh, I
let me
thought
just
you were
throw
done.
out, no, because
Sorry.
I have a few specifics too. I did ask for the details in the second set of reductions a couple weeks ago. The line item said $261,000 reduction, and that was described as 1 admin and 4+1 shifts. But I'm interested in what the detail is there, like how much of it is in 4+1 and how many 4+1s. And the most recent FAQ that we got said there are 6 SEL tutorials and 4 program tutorials, EL, METCO, and STS. The course catalog says the Metco has a separate class that is the Metco tutorial. And it says that it's staffed by a special education teacher and a content area teacher. Are those staff FTE funded by the Metco grant? Like, is the content area teacher who is the Metco tutorial teacher? Is
L-
this,
I
Carolyn,
believe
you've
this
asked
special.
about 4 questions.
Yeah,
Maybe
so,
take one at a time.
Yeah.
okay, actually I asked one question. My first was that we're still waiting for information. So my second question is about whether the Metco grant covers the Metco tutorial staff.
So I feel like we've discussed this and in answers to those questions that Carolyn has said. And so I think Robin has those responses, but I didn't know.
I just want to clarify one thing which maybe was a little confusing from ERSC. The high school shared data on the class schedule, raw data, and there were multiple, like, it's hard to interpret a class schedule without being an expert in class scheduling, and there was many things like multiple sections assigned to the same teacher for the same block and other things, and so I just want to be clear that there was no clarity that there was 4 or even 6 teachers assigned to a single class block. We were very clear that we didn't have the information
Right.
to interpret that. Okay.
It looks that way.
It cou-
If you look at the number of teachers assigned to, for example, freshman tutorial 01
Right.
has 6 lines, freshman tutorial 02
But
has,
we weren't sure what it meant.
and that's
so.
why I asked that question. So the first thing I was saying is that we haven't received that information yet to be able to understand how it's staffed.
We have talked about this. I thought we had provided. It's okay. I think Robin is prepared to respond. There was a lot of pieces there.
So is the first one that you'd like me to respond to that part right there, or?
Well, I don't think you need to respond. I think I'm just saying we don't have that information yet.
Well, she can give it to you.
She's
Well,
going to give it to you,
I can give you an explanation of the way that tutorial is structured. So that 2 teachers to 12 students. So typically there'd be 2 teachers, 12 students assigned, 2 teachers, 12 students assigned. You might have 3 rooms of tutorial happening at a time, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. Students can kind of move between because they might need help from this teacher over here. It might be like a math teacher and a science teacher in one room and a social studies teacher and an ELA, so there's typically a math, a science, a social studies, and an English assigned to each tutorial total across 2 sections, at least 2 sections of it. That's my understanding, so that's how you get the 6-to-1 ratio. One of the things that happens when you reduce the number of +1s is you're probably going to reduce the number of teachers that are there, so your student-teacher ratio increases. So that was, I think, a question in there of, like, every time you reduce the number of teachers available, tutorial may still be scheduled because it has to fit into students' schedules, but you won't have as many teachers available. So that's part of it, and I don't know if I answered that clearly. I mean, I
No,
think,
but
okay.
I'll ask again.
All right.
In email.
Okay. And so what was the second, just, because
So
there were a
my
number of.
question is whether the Metco grant, so where the Metco tutorial has a content area teacher, is that content area teacher, when they're doing Metco tutorial, is that funded by the Metco grant?
I know that the special educator is, I'm unsure about the content area teacher.
I think actually that's an FAQ that's been,
And, yeah,
I thought posted, but it was posted today.
yeah.
So there is a response to that. So one part is and one
Yeah.
part isn't.
The other
Yeah.
part I'm not sure of, but the special educator is funded out of the Metco grant.
And sorry, Bella, when you're saying one part is and one part isn't,
I
does
think it's a combination. I think there was the content person, the teacher, content teacher, not necessarily, but a special ed teacher would be different or support.
And then I also was wondering I didn't see the EL and STS tutorials in the BHS catalog. And I'm also wondering what an SEL tutorial is. And is that like a class you sign up for?
I don't have the FAQs, but actually it cites the page where,
Yeah.
Susan, do you have the FAQ that was completed today?
Yeah.
What?
Oh.
I thought I thought Z actually posted it.
We
Didn't get email.
anything today.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So just generally, I really remain concerned with just like unless it's in the FAQ, it's been really difficult to get the information and to feel confident that things are as efficient as possible to, I don't want to lay off teachers or anybody. And so I want to feel confident that we are scheduling, that the high school is scheduled as efficiently as possible within the structure of our contract such that that we can realize trade-offs if possible, or savings that could save other jobs because we're lean and difficult choices have to be made. And so I don't feel like I have the information yet to be confident that that there's not more possibility there that could help us in other places.
I just want to be clear that I do believe the answers have been provided and that there are references to, all right, so did you want to?
I can.
Yeah. So I thought he had posted this, so I don't know if you're checking whether it's been posted, but every question that you've asked, we actually have tried to respond to, maybe not as quickly as you were hoping, but we have looked at everything, and what we feel we are presenting in the proposed budget is streamlined and efficient and best designed to meet needs of all our students in the proposed budget. So there are some reductions to +1 in the proposed budget, and in the next round of reductions, there are more profound reductions in +1, but +1 is really our supports for students socially, emotionally, and academically.
And again, I know what it is, and I feel like when you say it that way, there's an implication that I don't appreciate tutorial. I have children who were in tutorial, who one year had 4 teachers in the class. So what I'm really trying to do, I just want to be clear, is ensure that we're doing our best to maintain program that's valued, and I value tutorial.
What
while
I take issue with is leaving a thought that we have not answered your questions. You may not feel
haven't
satisfied with the answers to your questions, but we have really earnestly tried to answer questions. It's okay if you don't agree with them, but I would just.
It's not a matter of agreement, and I think I was looking for information, I think, from the high school about the staffing, but maybe that'll be forthcoming, or maybe it's in what we didn't get today.
Susan, if there was an FAQ that was posted today, can you email it to us? We didn't get it. Okay. My question is either for
I
you,
think
Bella.
Robin has a response.
Oh, Robin has.
Well, I just wanted to answer Carolyn's last couple of questions because I was able to find it, and it will come out in the most recent FAQ. The METCO tutorial staff includes a special education teacher and a content teacher, as you asked. The special education teacher is funded out of the METCO grant, as we believed, and the content area teacher is not. So that's the answer to that. In terms of the ELE and the STS tutorials listed in the, are they asking whether they were listed in the course catalog? The ELE tutorial is listed in the course catalog. It is on page 29. The STS, the SWS, and the SELT are not listed separately. They're all variants of a regular tutorial, so they carry the same course number of the TU 1000 or TU 2000 courses. And that's where they are in the course catalog. So they're not separate. And I do know in conversation with Anthony today, particularly as we look at any of the tutorials that are typically smaller in size, and some of those specialized ones might be smaller in size, they may be kind of reintegrated within the overall tutorial structure.
So my question is for Susan or for Bella. Has there been any conversation with the BEU about extending the date by which we would need to provide RIF notices to staff?
My fault. I didn't write them yet.
Okay.
Yes, but that is a request, and for everyone, the contractual dates that you have to let someone know if they might be a reduction in force and they would be impacted are kind of close to what. I don't know if the override. I think there has. Well, I was going to say, I think they have to decide there's going to be an override before there's an override date, but there has been a date that has been considered, and it's fairly close. So we would ask, so I'm sorry, I didn't ask the BU yet, and here I am on air saying it. So I guess I apologize to our members, but I will.
But that
So
is
the-
that is a consideration. to
Yes,
ask
that's
for
a
an extension.
consideration if we could, if there's an override election, have the override, and then the RIF notices could go out if they need to go out.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask,
Um,
could you just remind us what the dates are? Because I think, and they vary depending on unit or position. I don't remember the details.
Susan, do you have them? I can look them up if you.
No.
Well, she could say that one first.
When RIF notices have to go out for pre-PTS, for PTS and Unit B and everybody else.
Could you give us a sec while we look that up, if you had it?
I have the
Oh,
information.
you have it. Oh, okay.
So there's two sections of the contract that come into play for Unit A. And so May 1 is the date that we have to get the lion's share of the RIF letters out for Unit A. There's another section that says May 15th, but because we have the May 1 date, that is the date that we have been held to. Last year, we asked.
I'm sorry, Susan, I thought one was for non-PTS and one is PTS.
Yes, and that's the second date,
Yeah,
the May 15th.
yeah.
But when we do this, the majority of them are PTS, but we do have those two dates there. After that, most other employees and other bargaining units, like AFSCME, for example, and Unit C would be June 15th.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Val.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the context for the conversation. And I guess I would describe what we're facing. I've called it an existential crisis. Val has said the system would be unrecognizable if some of these situations occurred. And I just, as we got into the weeds on the tutorial, I just want to clarify the genesis of that program, because when I say we face an existential crisis, Brookline Public Schools has been a very special public school system. The tutorial program was created, just to clarify, it wasn't called 4+1. It was, we created the tutorial program back in the early 2000s after a 2-year research project. And the genesis of the idea was a couple of things: that there was no formal academic support for kids at the high school other than special education. And so what we did is we did a little research for 2 years comparing the results of Learning Center academic progress with the new tutorial concept. It was 5 kids, 1 teacher. The numbers were the same in the learning centers as they were in the new tutorial concept. Anyway, after the 2 years, the results of the research done by BC and Harvard were that the kids who looked academically the same and socially emotionally the same, the kids in the tutorial experiment did a little bit better on test scores, grades, well-being. It was a pretty comprehensive study. What I'm saying is that then the tutorial morphed into something that was pretty substantial, and the kind of services that were provided to kids outside, academic services and social emotional services that were provided to kids outside of special education, were part of what made the high school special. And simultaneously, this tutorial provided something very unusual. It provided a teacher with a different kind of preparation and a different kind of professional work. Because, teachers, they come in, if they're teachers, they start teaching 5 classes, 4 classes, whatever, and they can do that forever. So one of the ideas here was to differentiate the teaching profession and give them a formal academic preparation that made them feel like they were doing some professional stuff that was different and interesting. Anyway, what I'm saying again out loud is that the tutorial is an example of something that made the Brookline Public Schools very special. And as we talk about the cuts that we're facing throughout the system, including the music program, conservatory program, and the librarians, and the technology teachers, all of these cuts really, they go to the heart of what makes Brookline Public Schools so special. And I think that, I spent 23 years working in the school system, loving it and respecting it, viewing it as a lighthouse, innovative, caring, loving school system. And what we're facing now and what the public has to understand as we're looking down the road at potentially devastating cuts is that, again, the existential heart of the system is at risk. And I always like to quote Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who says that taxes are the price we pay for civilization. Well, taxes are the price we pay for a lighthouse school district. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Sarah?
I believe that really is our story to tell, is to tell the public what the eventual impact of these line items are. And so I appreciated that Bella was able to get into that a little bit about conservatory earlier, and that you were telling us a bit about about tutorial. And if you can imagine a teacher that is able to sit down with a smaller group of kids and explain a concept to just those few kids in tutorial, that really is an amazing learning opportunity. And it helps the regular class too, because the kids that sit in the general education class are able to go faster and quicker if some of the kids have a bit of exposure to the teacher on the side. And when Bella was talking about conservatory, I thought the conservatory was really well stated, the importance of it by public comment today. But then you also have the impact of getting rid of conservatory on the teachers that are left behind to take up those additional, that additional time with students. So once you don't have conservatory for 5th through 8th, you have your academic teachers that now their caseloads go up. And they're not able to, because they have to spend more time with other kids, they're not able to do the same coverage. And then the principal steps in to do that coverage. And then the principal isn't there for instructional rounds. And then we don't have that real commitment to quality in education. Just as my third point, I wanted to talk about, there's an unaligned staff member at the high school that is proposed if we do the, the 86%. And to tell a little bit about that story is if you don't have that dean, that the work that those deans do that are face to face with students when an issue comes up and the dean is able to go in and question a group of kids and have a prior existing relationship with those kids and get through the issue really quickly. If you're going to remove one of those deans, the two that are left are just not going to be able to operate at the same level. And I think that's our commitment to the public, is to tell these stories of what makes Brookline what Brookline is and what the great impact would be of these cuts. So I'm glad that that's part of the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Suzanne? And then Donna.
Yeah, I just want to put a plug in for conservatory. I mean, I know no one wants to get rid of it, but And I just hope that we have a conversation, I don't know if it's tonight or some other time, about alternatives and how we can preserve conservatory. I just feel it's so, so important, really for our 4th and 5th graders, to be exposed to have the opportunity for instruments, and they use that all the way through high school. Our number is 7 FTEs, full-time equivalents. That is about 1 FTE per school. We have 8 K-8, pre-K to 8s. And, you know, just brainstorming, I might suggest that we go back to our school administrators and say, if you could hold on conservatory, is there someplace else where we could take that 1 FTE at your school? It's a difficult choice. All of these are difficult choices, but I'd love for us to have at least a conversation about a possibility of making that happen.
Are we,
Donna
is there
and
a
then Jesse.
proposal to cut conservatory tonight?
It's the 86% override.
But we're not being asked to vote on
No.
that, right?
No,
Okay.
Donna and then Jesse.
I want to make sure, or let me say this differently. I want to, in response to Bob and Sarah, I want to make sure I understand that the intention for tonight is budget deliberation, right? So this is the appropriate place where we're discussing or asking questions about whether it be a line item or a program or the decisions or rationale or things like that. So that's what we're doing, right? Okay, I want to make sure. So for Suzanne, if you had questions, it would be appropriate for us to have that discussion this evening. I think that's the intention. I think, and I want to make sure I'm reiterating that everything that we're discussing tonight is incredibly painful for everybody.
Excuse me, someone's eating with their mic on.
That would be Bob. Well, I can't remember what I was saying now, but I think I'm saying it is an incredibly painful conversation to have. It is also incredibly painful to have to ask questions, I mean, of the superintendent. I have to be honest, it's incredibly awkward and uncomfortable for me to even ask, why did you make this decision and not this decision? It's awkward for me to ask Robin and Karen and Susan, because I know you are all working incredibly hard. I know that the principals are doing everything with integrity and good faith, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I reiterate, we're asking these questions because it is our responsibility as elected officials to do our due diligence. That was important. That's important for me to say and reiterate, because while I do, I respect and value all of the decisions that you got, all the work that you're doing and all the decisions you're making. I think it's also important during this time that is reserved for budget deliberation for us to be able to ask these questions, as uncomfortable as it is for everybody. Thank you.
Jesse?
Thank you. I'm not sure where we were in terms of a motion to accept Bella's budget as proposed this evening. My comment is, given the exquisite detail, the uncompromising professionalism, the trust that we're giving into our central administration, the amount of effort that Susan, Bella, Robin, Karen, and the entire team have done, the edge cutting, the fringe cutting, the little deeper cutting that have resulted in a budget that does not cut FTEs that are student facing, that if it's the right time, I'd like to make a motion to accept Bella's budget as presented this evening.
I'll make the motion, Jesse, I have the language in front of me. But
Thank you.
I want to make sure that people are, I'll make the motion, we can still discuss. So I move to adopt the superintendent's FY27 proposed budget in the amount of $149,801,901, and to continue to work with the town to align the school budget to the town's allocation of $145,259,571, increase from $144,533,297 on March 13th, 2026, through the identification of revenues, including a potential operating override. Further, as part of the FY27 financial plan, the school committee approves the grants presented in the FY27 budget as modified during the budget deliberation process.
Betsy, do you mind putting up the slide
said
that
it
has
better
that?
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Mariah
Val,
seconds.
thank you.
Yep, sure.
I'm just thinking it might be helpful for people to see the text too.
Yeah.
Although maybe we have it in our packets, I'm not sure.
It's in the packet.
Thank you. Yeah, but people online at
He
least.
just turned himself off. I think he just wanted to move for it. So Carolyn?
Cut off on the screen. Can you make it fit? It's cut off.
So there were two differences in what Val just said, right? You filled in the number as 149,801,901, and you turned including an operating override into including a potential operating override. So I think those are the differences I noticed.
Correct. I just said potential operating override.
Can you repeat the number again, Andy? Please.
149,801,901. It's on the first slide, Jesse.
I don't have all the slides handy right now. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't have the hard copies. Okay. Thank you.
sure. Carolyn?
Thanks.
We have a second. Mariah seconded.
I don't know if this is in, so there is something that was produced that we didn't get today, is that right?
It just got emailed to everybody.
Okay, I can't get my email.
So I thought C had published it. So it
Okay, I'll just ask my question.
Yeah.
So I had a question from when we first got the budget book, because I had never seen steps to success as part of our org chart before, because it's a 501c3 independent organization. And then we were told in one of these FAQs that PSB pays a director of Steps to Success and advisors in Steps to Success. The STEPS website actually shows that they have one advisor and two directors. And I'm just curious about that structure. And where do we see the Steps to Success staff in our budget? Where are those?
They're in the district. They're central office.
Central office.
So they're listed under the district.
OTL.
Yeah.
And how many people do we?
There's one director.
Yeah.
And they're not the same director that you see on the Steps to Success website, which is a director associated with that nonprofit.
I see.
It's a director of the work that happens here during the school day. So they coordinate.
So it's an
schools.
administrative position
It's an
here.
administrative position here. I don't know, I mean, it's existed for a long time. It moved within the org chart because that position used to fall under one of the senior directors of teaching and learning.
Yep.
And with the reduction of a director of
Got it.
director of teaching and learning, now they
Okay.
fall directly under me. What I would say is that person is responsible for coordination for the STS programming that happens in school as part of the Public Schools of Brookline contribution to that relationship.
Yep.
And as do the advisors. The advisors are working with students during the school day and then for, I think, 1 hour after school. And then Steps to Success, Inc. is responsible for out-of-school programming.
Got it.
Some of that summer programming, some of that beyond high school to college programming supports. So it's really a combination that happens. And
Got it. I had never heard of, I didn't know there was, I had never heard of us being part of STEPS, but it sounds like it's a sort of separate position.
Partnership.
I think it's also so Robin meets with the board regularly, and they meet once a month?
They meet once a month.
Yes.
Donna is the liaison from the school committee.
Yes.
And I think that, it was actually helpful for me recently to learn a little bit about the history of STEPS.
My question isn't about the program. The program is great, and in fact, as I have said many, many times, I would love to see more STEPS work pushed down and down into the lower grades. I just had never seen it as part of our org chart, so I was just confused about that, whether it was a sort of quasi relationship.
No, they are a Public Schools of Brookline employee, and the shift in the org chart had to do with the shift in the overall organizational changes that happened in OTL.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I do have one more thing if there isn't someone else. Okay, I'm going to talk about something I talked about yesterday at finance. It's important to me to say this also in the context of everything we're dealing with, and what we're asking of the public, and the recommendations in the ENRSC schools subcommittee executive report recommendations. One of their recommendations is that the public schools of Brookline enter into lease agreements with organizations that we are giving free office space to in our buildings during the day. And I think that we should be working on doing that. In addition, you know, we all know what the cuts look like, but what the ENRSC has identified are cost structure changes and revenue potential. And I think it's really important that we demonstrate a commitment to taking those kinds of measures so that even if we are back here again in 3 years, as Jesse noted, that perhaps we're not as badly back here. It doesn't sound like there is, I don't know, it's not clear to me whether there is sort of commitment or interest to moving forward with addressing that. But there's potential revenue there, and I hope that we're going to be open-minded and flexible to take on the ENRSC recommendations, including that one. I would rather have a lease with an outside organization, an independent organization, than lose a librarian. So again, I'm really looking for ways for us to preserve our program. So I hope that that's going to be taken up.
So I watched the finance committee meeting as my late night TV last night, and I thought the superintendent did an excellent job at framing some of this. So would you mind repeating some of what you said at that meeting?
So I know, actually, the ENR committee has made a lot of recommendations, and so we've actually, I don't think there's a recommendation that we haven't considered and thought about, you know, taking it to the next step. As I've researched what entities are using space in our school-owned buildings, it's a varied list, and how it came to be that some are not being charged a fee for that use. Some of it is embodied in an agreement, and some of it has not. And so what my response was, I prefer to make sure that when we take steps to do something, that we are doing it with the full knowledge of everyone's use of space. I also feel there's a lack of clarity around how those situations came to be, and I really am in favor of offering transparency to that. I think the whole school committee should know who's utilizing the space and under what circumstances. And so I'm hesitant to move quickly to assert changes in some of our relationships with some of the entities that are using our space, but it's not a reluctance to take that on. I just want to make sure that what we do is fair, open, and also takes into consideration what the members of the committee might think. I think it will probably entail a relook at some of our policy, and again, for discussion, and see how, what everyone thinks. I think actually it's a really important process that everybody have a better understanding how space is used in the schools. and everyone should be comfortable with how it ends up. And I do believe we're actually very open to that. It's something that's been highlighted as something that we should have more clarity around.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bob?
Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3. So there's an opportunity to talk about the budget in general, right? There's
Yes.
a motion to accept the budget. So I want to say two things. One, I want to honor what Carolyn was asking about tutorial in terms of accountability. I think that the history of the tutorial program revealed that there needed to be strong accountability for the work that was being done by many, many teachers with many, many kids. I just want to, agree with Carol's concern about that. The other thing I want to throw out, and I've talked to Bella about this, and she and I disagree on this, but we're in a crisis, and one of the things I suggested in terms of budget is something that I did a long time ago at the high school, which is require every administrator to teach at least one class. Now, for example, there are about 15 vice principals in the system. If each one of those vice principals taught one class, you would save $300,000. Now, I know it's a little complicated in terms of scheduling. It would have to be a middle school initiative because that would be, just take an English class or a math class or a Spanish class, something like that. But there are other administrators in the system at the high school and even sort of central administrators. I would say that 20 administrators, at least in the system, could teach one class and save us $400,000. And I think that's not a small thing to think about. And it's especially interesting because you don't lose services to kids by assigning administrators to teach. The kids are still being taught, but by a different person. So I want us to think about that because it's a big money saver. It puts administrators in a classroom day in and day out doing the main work of a school system, which I think is good. The relationships that you build as a teacher, even if it's one class, I'm very familiar with it, is very important. And I just think that it honors, if administrators are all teaching, it honors the main work that we do in a school system, which is teaching. So I just want to throw it out. It's a potential savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars without taking any services away from kids. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think it's a great idea, Bob, in general, in that I love the idea. It's the 4+ model, and you're seeing people in different contexts, and you're having that face-to-face experience with the students in the role as teacher as opposed to the administrator. With that said, I don't think it's accurate to describe it as not representing a loss in service, because the time that they would have spent doing dean activities, principal, vice principal activities, there is a loss in service. You can't do the same things in the day that you could have done in a 8-hour day that you're now doing in a day that also includes teaching, right? Because teaching is teaching is a big responsibility. So I just want to reflect that bit, that we have administrators because they are doing other things that make sure that the building keeps running. And so there would be a loss, but it is valuable.
Can I push back on that?
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to say that, I took points of view for 20 years. People said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. There are a lot of administrators at the high school. If anything bad happened, there's plenty of people to take care of this stuff. And, you're sort of creating an algorithm that if you teach one class a day, you're gonna miss out on administrative work, and what's that about? And I just disagree with that algorithm. I think that if you have a teaching responsibility once a day, I had my F-block class once a day, and then I worked for the rest of the day as an administrator. And it worked. And so, that's my research. My qualitative research is that
How many other administrators at the high school did that?
everybody,
They all taught?
everybody.
I thought everyone said, oh, Bob, you're so unusual.
No. Part of my expectation was that, it wasn't against any union contract or anything like that. I want everybody to teach one class. So Pete Rittenberg, who was a he was an English teacher before he became the athletic director of the high school. He called me in, he says, Bob, I'm running a school here for 1,300 kids. The athletic program has got 1,300 kids. How do you expect me to teach? So I said to him, Pete, I'm the head of the school for 2,000 kids, and I'm going to teach, so be quiet. Just teach your English class. And he did it, and again, it does not impact your administrative responsibilities. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. You make do.
Making do is not.
No, not make do. You work hard like we all do, and we do the best we can to take care of all the business. Teaching one class does not take away from your administrative responsibilities.
Administrative responsibilities could include responding to emergencies. So what happens in a building with one vice principal if there's an emergency and that vice principal can't leave their classroom?
Now, I understand, Andy, but it's very rare that would happen. Very. I never missed a class in 20 years.
You had a large administrative.
I know, I did, but I mean, I'm just saying, there wasn't an emergency that would cause me to leave my classroom and respond to an emergency. It never happened. I just think having done it and having, Hal Mason, assistant head of Brookline High School, continues to teach an English class. No problem. And his job is very intense. Okay? I feel very strongly that this is a good way to save a bunch of money and to actually put administrators back in the classroom a little bit and have them have a good time.
Donna?
I just want to add maybe another facet to the discussion and for consideration. I work in an academic medical center, and there is significant research that shows physicians who teach have improved, much improved well-being. So it's just like another facet of it. Might not be necessarily financial or about their bandwidth in the classroom, but I wonder if it would have an impact on their sense of well-being.
Can we call the question?
Yeah, I had my hand raised, actually.
Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, these are, the discussion's fascinating, and these are great ideas for future, but I wanted to call the question.
Okay.
I actually have another question. Sorry, it's
The question's been called, and I'll second it. So procedurally, call the question means we're stopping debate.
Well-
And it's,
Correct.
that is what calling the question is. We can have a vote.
That
and
is
say, "Oh,
correct.
ask your question."
Call the question means like at town meeting, terminate debate. So you
Is
would-
that what we, is that part of
Parliamentary
school
procedure, which
committee?
is what we follow.
We
It's
need
not
a
just
two-thirds vote of the school committee
So
to
I don't
terminate
get to
debate.
speak.
Well, we're taking 2/3 vote. Jesse, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Donna?
I'm voting on the budget or voting on the call to question?
Whether to terminate
Whether
debate.
to
You're voting
terminate
whether to
debate.
terminate debate.
Oh, no.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
I'm abstaining.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
No.
Bob?
No.
I vote no as well. What is that?
Where's that?
I voted no.
That means Carolyn should ask her question.
I have a comment. And sorry, Jesse, I know you don't like long meetings, but this is our budget. This is what we do. And this is our.
That is not what I said, Carolyn, I'm sorry.
Oh,
That is
sorry,
not
then I
what
misunderstood you.
What
When
I
you
said is that this is an interesting discussion, bringing up future opportunities, like having administrators teach, like having offices that are having free rent have to pay. These are incredibly important things for the next cycle. But what's on the table for the school committee right now is looking at approving $149,801,901. And this discussion that we're having is great, but it does not touch that budget number that Bella and her team have presented to us.
Thank you. So I was actually going to say that the kind of thing that Bob is talking about, I think, is really important. And it may be reiterating what I was trying to say, that this number that we're looking at is derived by, the program we want to do. And for me, and maybe for Bob, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you brought up another sort of savings sort of way of doing things, and a different way of doing things that might be a sacrifice of some things, but we're sacrificing teachers, we're sacrificing a lot. And so I think there's just an effort to look for ways to, I think this is a time where we have to do things a little bit differently. All that said, I am going to say one line item that just I can't feel 100% comfortable with, especially when I see it at the top, if we were to have to go to the to the override option 3, is the FF&E, which I believe is $75,000. And it's just, I feel like we're belt tightening, we're making sacrifices, and I don't know if there's a way to, I don't remember when Mariah tried to restore the librarians, sort of how that worked, but I guess I don't love spending $75,000 on furniture next year in the situation. I have to believe that in Brookline, based on sort of the level of FF&E that I see, the level of FF&E that we saw go into dumpsters, and we see go into dumpsters all the time, do we really need to spend that $75,000 on that?
So there's
believe
been
we've
a
been told
motion,
that's-
there's been a
Can I
second.
just comment that? I believe we've been told that that's necessary custodial equipment, the majority of that for next year. So it's not anything you're seeing, it's literally cleaning equipment. Am I correct, Susan, that that's what we, yes.
Because it says, we talked about it, and it was also furniture.
It's both, but as it says in the note there too, it's custodial equipment. The majority is custodial equipment.
Right. And I just want to clarify, there's a motion, there's been a second, you can always move to amend.
Well, that's not the motion, unless you're.
I'm saying she can move to amend.
There's nothing to amend because what's presented on, well, I don't know if you're talking about striking it altogether from the budget, no matter what. But like the 86% is not in the motion. That's not what that's not what's in the
I
vote.
understand that.
Okay.
But I'm just saying.
That's
the
correct.
process by which one could do something is to move to amend.
You could move to strike
Right.
that from this next year's budget, but you would be reducing it. And so what would you be replacing it with?
I don't know.
Okay.
A job, a human. A librarian. I don't know. I don't know how it works, so.
Any other? Okay, I think we are ready to vote. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Abstain.
Bob?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Superintendent Wong and staff, for putting this all together and answering our questions, our written questions, our verbal questions. Thank you for all the time that you've put into this, and as we move forward to a potential May vote. Donna?
Can I ask a process question? So what happens, I mean, I know what happens next. There's an override vote on May 5th. What happens after the override vote? We come back to budget deliberations?
No.
We've also
But we just
presented
said-
the scenarios, what happens when different things.
Oh, so we also voted the 86%?
You didn't. You voted the budget, but the next thing that's gonna happen is well before May 5th. Next week, theoretically, the select board is gonna put something on the ballot. We don't know what it is, right? We don't know what we've heard they wanna do 3 tiers. We don't know anything else beyond that particularly. Maybe it'll be the things you saw on that slide, maybe it won't. I think we'll get much better sense, and then staff will present again if they need to present like new results of what might happen. And if it lands here, then you already know it's either gonna be fully funded, the 86%, and then nothing.
And then
But
this
we'll
is
know more soon.
recommended to town meeting, and town meeting then votes. Okay, so moving on to fiscal management policy. Mariah, do you want to walk us through the changes from the last reading?
I would love to, Val. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much.
So since the last time we met, we just had 4 minor changes that and those are marked in track changes. 2 of them are just referencing a newly updated town policy, which is the environmentally preferred products policy. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Which coincidentally, Alexandra Vecchio, Director of Sustainability, came to policy on Tuesday, and it was very timely. Oh, I forgot a P, environmentally preferable product procurement policy. But it's relevant to both the purchase of environmentally friendly products, which is why it's now referenced in D91, and it is also referenced to the disposal. It's under the disposal of school building, school property, which is D12, because the policy addresses both of those things. And because our purchasing and all of these things are governed by procurement, it's helpful, and procurement is a hybrid service. We referenced it in both places. Then there was one comment.
Yeah, so just to clarify about the town EPPP policy, so that's being updated right now. The school committee, it doesn't go in the school committee's policy manual, but the school committee will shortly be asked to vote to not exactly approve, but to support it.
Yeah. Then the other update that was made was, I believe, to I'm trying to find it. Is it D5? Thank you, D5. I'm just trying to find D5. I apologize. My competency at finding that page. There we go. Was just to clarify that the deputy superintendent role is the school business official. This is the policy, but someone asked, who is officially the school business official? And I realized it wasn't in the policy as written, clarifying that the deputy superintendent for admin and finance is. And then the last thing is back under procurement, including, this was a recommendation from Sadaf Kazmi, who's the chair of the ERSC Schools Subcommittee, and we thought it made sense, was to incorporate the training element of the MOU about having a certified public purchasing official and employees attending procurement trainings that are offered by the town. So that is just sort of memorializing one aspect of the MOU into policy. And that is all of the changes that you've seen since the last time that this came in front of you. So I'm going to move for a vote of Section D in its entirety.
Great. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Jesse seconds. Any further discussion?
I know, I should have brought this up last time. I'm sorry. Could you just talk on the cash in school buildings? That this petty cash funds are disallowed starting in FY27. You just give me the rationale behind that.
I would defer to Susan, because I don't want to, this is an operational question. So maybe Susan, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it if you want me to, Susan, but I don't want to overstep like I do. Do you have the mic?
Sorry about that. Yeah, if you're using modern practices, there really is no need to have petty cash because we have things called P cards. We have ways of processing payments for things in a timely way that years and years ago you didn't. And so most school districts don't and haven't for quite some time allowed for petty cash in schools. So we have online payment programs where people can pay online. So we have a whole litany of different ways that we can engage and process information from family to bank to paying our vendors. So
I'm just thinking a long time ago when a parent may come up, a guardian comes to the school, they need taxi money to get home or bus fare. You would just pull it out of petty cash. I mean, you had to account for it. So I'm sure there's some issues around accountability, but there are times when it just felt like you needed some petty cash. So that's all I'm wondering about.
I think years ago when you didn't have other options, you know, there may have been a need, but in today's day and time, with all of the technology we have and different ways to engage in e-commerce, there really isn't a need to have petty cash in the buildings anymore.
Okay, Donna?
Thank you.
Two things. One is, I want to say, as someone who has read the PSB policy manual from cover to cover multiple times over the past, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, I'm so excited about this. Thank you. Really, it's a huge amount of work. I mean, most of the policies hadn't been updated since like the 70s and 80s, so it's absolutely amazing, and I appreciate it. I wanted to just make sure Susan has reviewed this and has provided her feedback and her thumbs up. Yes?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, thank you also then for your work. So kudos to all of you.
Yeah, this has been this has been ongoing for how many years? For probably it started when Sam Rippon was the Deputy Superintendent for Administration and Finance, and Mariah already did quite a bit of work at that time, and then picked it up again in earnest this year. And now we're close to the finish line.
It's your legacy.
I want to make one friendly amendment to the vote that Andy just caught, which is in D13.3, it shouldn't say petty cash funds there, it should just say cash funds.
Since we've just abolished petty cash.
Exactly, it should just say cash funds. So it's just, Betsy, I'll make sure to give you the right version without that word.
Okay.
And hopefully that's the only word that has gone awry.
Thank you for doing this, Mariah.
Thanks.
Bob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes, with a big thank you to Mariah.
And I vote yes as well, with a big thank you to Mariah, Susan, and Bella, and everybody else who's taken a look at this for us. And Mariah, thank you. 4 years, and how many meetings are you counting down to now? 3? 3 meetings left? The Mariah Nobrega.
Honorary policy section.
Fiscal policy. Moving on, is there any new business? Bob?
I just want to recognize a graduate of the Brookline Public Schools, Driscoll School and Brookline High School 1981, who just served brilliantly as the host for the 2nd year in a row of the Academy Awards, Conan O'Brien.
Any other? Jesse?
Thank you. I recognize that at this point, in terms of school days, we're well past the midpoint of the year, probably about 70 days to the end of school. My new business request is that we get an update from the superintendent, if not this evening, then at an upcoming meeting, about the status of a permanent hire for the Deputy Director of Student Services and the Deputy Director of Administration and Finance. In most educational enterprises, searches for those kinds of very high-level positions usually begin before January, since they are exceedingly complex. And in either of those cases, if the current individuals do not continue past June 30th of this year, there is an incredible amount of information that would have to be carefully, efficiently, and successfully handed to that individual in order for the organization to seamlessly move into the next academic year. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's heard by the superintendent. Oh, and ANF. Any other new business? Okay. I move to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Brookline Educators Union, Units A, B, and C, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee and the chair so declares. And purpose 7, to review and approve minutes from the February 26, 2026 executive session. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Mariah seconded. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah? Andy?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
And I vote yes, and we will not be returning to open session. Have a wonderful evening.